Harold Bloom knew over 20 years ago that there should not be a Blood Meridian movie. And today, we are going to hear Bloom speak at length on the Blood Meridian movie, which most likely will be released in 2026. And if you don't know, my name is Ian, and Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Cormac McCarthy here on YouTube. If you look at the playlist down below, you will find over 180 videos. Yes, 180 videos on McCarthy's books, his life, and his philosophy. But enough from me. Let us now hear from Bloom. I am sure that if Mr. Tommy Lee Jones wants to, he will make a film of it. I wish he wouldn't. I certainly won't go to see it. Do you remember John Huston, who was, after all, a terrific film director? Do you remember his ghastly Moby Dick? It was bad enough that he had the impossible Gregory Peck as Ahab, which was a terrible miscasting, but he had a beautifully sensitive Ishmael in Richard Basehart, and he had an amazing Father Mapple in Orson Welles. And Bloom continues about the speech that Welles gives. He does it very beautifully with extraordinary Shakespearean music. But then it's a very Shakespearean speech. But think of the disaster of that film. Besides, there is the other problem. You can see a lot of stylized violence in different Hollywood epics, but if you really tried to convey the precise quality that McCarthy is getting through to you, I don't think spectators could take it. I think you start having defensive laughter. It's beyond one's capacity to absorb visually. And so Bloom nails it right on the head here because Blood Meridian is not just a bone tomahawk or a violent western where people are getting scalped and people are getting raped, because of course that's what's happened in the Wild West, and there have been some directors that have pushed the limits and shown the level of violence that would be present in a Blood Meridian film. But the problem with the Blood Meridian movie is that Blood Meridian is so much more than the violence, because as I talk about over in my Blood Meridian course and on this channel all the time, McCarthy uses subtle, unconscious layers of characterization, of character arcs, of plot through his mystical system that he enables throughout the text, which includes Freemasonry, Kabbalah, astrology, tarot, numerology, Gnosticism, Christianity, Buddhism. All of those things have direct references in the text. And he also packs it with beautiful prose that has no translation to film. And on top of all that, a lot of the judges' most epic speeches are these monologues, which in a 2.5-hour film are going to be hard to fit in, especially in context, because all of them meal with the parable of the harness maker and him being the cold forger and those things. They mirror the mystical system and the palindromic arc that McCarthy created in Blood Meridian. And so, how are you going to capture all of that visually? And this is why books are better than movies. There are very few movies that couldn't be turned into a beautiful novel, especially with a legendary author. But we have legendary directors all the time, like John Huston, and I won't call John Hillcoat a legendary director. Funny, they're both John H's for Blood Meridian, but Moby Dick is the same way. On the surface, the plot of killing the white whale is cool, but the spiritual, unconscious, primordial elements of Moby Dick are what really matters. And can you really get that across in a film? But speaking of the violence, so some of it has been done before, but how accurate of a depiction are we talking? Because a lot of the judge's pedophilia is ambiguous. Like, he does have some confirmed kills on the women, but for instance, at the Tucson Presidio, there a girl is thrown over the north wall, and it's implied that it was the judge, but we get no confirmation. And if we're trying to depict the archon of evil, which the judge is, because these men, when you look at their confrontation with the judge naked out in the desert on the rock before the kid gets there, are enamored by him. He is massive. He is bald. He is albino. He takes them through an alchemical process because he may be searching for the Philosopher's Stone. That's why you have Black and White Jackson. Type in Alchemy and Blood Meridian up there on the search bar if you want to see my video on Alchemy and Blood Meridian. But they have this magnified view of him. But us as the readers don't have that. And that's why a lot of people dismissed the judge's supernaturalness, in the text, because there are a million logic bros reading the story. Yes, I understand that you are an atheist, or that you are a Christian and this doesn't exist, and you don't worship men, and you're a libertarian, or you're a socialist. But when you let yourself feel, you can be put under a spell by individuals. And that's what is happening to the men by the judge. And so, if that is true, then in the text, you're going to have to, or excuse me, in the movie, you are somehow going to have to depict that. And so, a plain John Hillcoat, high noon style, like he did in The Proposition, is absolutely going to fall flat in this because if you go watch the James Franco test footage of Blood Meridian and you see the judge in the high noon light or by the campfire, and he looks very plain, and there's no supernatural elevation or surreal filming or color grading or kind of red filters or stuff like that, because it is the Sonoran and Chihuahuan desert where things get very mystical. That's why Carlos Castaneda released one of the best-selling books on spirituality that was set in the Sonoran desert. So without that supernatural element, a lot of the violence is just going to seem dumb. Because as the judge grows in mystical stature, the kid remains the same. Because speaking of the kid, how are we going to show a character that sometimes slips out of the story for dozens of pages at a time? How are we going to depict the Four of Cups, the card of blended pleasure, and the kid's false messianic arc with John Hillcoat? And these things, excuse me, may be going over your head, but they unconsciously work in the book. And when someone reads the book and likes it, some of the time it's just because of the prose. So if we remove the prose because we can't bring that over, and all we have are the characters and the plot, then we should also bring over how McCarthy uses plot and characterization, but it is so subtle. Like in the synoptic chapter headings, which are the text at the start of each chapter that previews what's going to happen. Excuse me. I think in chapter 13 it says Ogdoad, which are the 8 levels of celestial heaven in Gnosticism. In one of the earlier chapters, McCarthy evokes Anareta, which is another Gnostic reference. They are everywhere. Same with Freemasonry and everything else I named. The text is a hermetic code that, once understood, can unlock you to a deeper understanding of not just the text but your own life. And it works in interplay with the judge's kind of Nietzschean philosophy. And of course, all the underlying social themes of, the West. And so I don't know if this movie is just getting made because, it will serve kind of the Wendy Goon crowd. Like this conversation on Blood Meridian, the guys having that who said that they enjoyed watching Wendy Goon's video more than reading the book, they don't care about the tarot. They don't care. Yeah, I'm saying it here. Yeah, I'm going out on a limb. They are not interested in the transcendent experience or higher consciousness. Maybe Wendy Goon is, and that's why he makes YouTube videos and is the one reading the book and being the innovator. But they aren't. And the only person to really kind of push, a very similar theme, which is an axiomatic influence of Blood Meridian, which is, The Heart of Darkness by Conrad, was Francis Ford Coppola in Apocalypse Now. And I don't personally know many directors who cannot just film like that, but can catch the subtle elements that Apocalypse Now has. Because you have someone like the director of Dune, Dennis V., and he is technically perfect, but it's hollow. David Lynch's Dune has much more soul and flavor in it. It's not better, but Dennis had 2 movies to work with what I would say is a much easier book to adapt because of the length of it, which is Dune. So I think with the movie, we should be excited to see some of the stuff done because I watched The Road by John Hillcoat. I've seen multiple John Hillcoat movies and shows, and he does a good job. So it's going to be exciting, even if the casting picks aren't good, even if they put Ryan Gosling as the judge, which they are rumored to do, even if they put Timothy Chalamet as the kid, like they are rumored to do, even if they put Zendaya as Camila, who is going to be the kid's love interest and help him see the light and tell her tragic death by snakebite. It will still be cool to see some of the most iconic scenes, the Comanche attack, the ferry scene, the party in Chihuahua. It will all be very good, and those things are very hard to mess up. Obviously, some of the subtle elements are going to be cool, but with John Hillcoat's ability and CGI and stuff, I feel like the Comanche attack is going to be dope. And so instead of talking shit down below, which people have already started saying why it can't work, or why it can work, or who they want the judge to be, right now I want to ask you guys, what are you excited to see in Hillcoat's adaptation? What do you think he's going to do well? Like what scene? Maybe the whole thing's going to suck, but what part are you going to be like, oh shit, I'm ready for this? I think if they're smart, they should do the harness maker parable. That'd be a nice flashback and like really set up the mood and stuff of the show without having to just show more killing of Indians and Mexicans. Then obviously at the end, there can be a sense of retribution with the same actor or a kid that looks like the kid that goes off and who the kid eventually kills before entering Fort Griffin. And so, boom, there you have it, everybody. Those are my thoughts. Harold Bloom, I think, is correct. But luckily, if it was filmed back then, they wouldn't have it as many technical tricks and special effects to make this work, even though I don't want that. I think that if it's going to be somewhat not well done, the more of that we have, the probably better it's going to be. And so, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys all very soon.